Acquiring new words might be the most important task of a language learner. Words are the most basic element of a tongue. They are, as Luca Lamparello would put it, the bricks of a language, the smallest unit on which you have to build upon. Yet, notwithstanding the importance of vocabulary learning, many people do not have a structured approach to it, which usually makes them move slower towards their language learning goals. That was certainly the case for me. When I started learning my first foreign tongue after English, I would struggle for many years when it came to acquiring new words. Through a lot of trial and error, and after learning 5 languages though, I have come up with a method which, albeit not perfect, has certainly helped me learn vocabulary at a faster rate. In this video, I'm going to share it with you. Ready? Let's go! Hi! I'm Julian, a failed musician who went from speaking 3 languages at age 18 to speaking 8 languages at age 26. In this video, I will tell you how I go about the potentially monotonous, but at the same time highly important, task of learning vocabulary. Since there is quite a lot of material to cover, I have decided to split the video in 2 parts. In this first episode, I will cover the following points. Firstly, I will do a small disclaimer, then I will briefly outline my method, and after that, I will touch upon the 2 first steps of my 3-step process. Namely, I will explain how I create the list of vocabulary and how I update it. To start off, I'd like to make 3 disclaimers about this series of 2 videos. 1. I'm not in any way claiming that my method is the best or that it should suit everyone. I just want to outline a way of going about it that can be of help to some people. 2. The schedule I will describe is not by any means something I can implement every day I study vocabulary. In fact, I rarely manage to go through all the steps of the process. It is thus just an ideal towards which I try to strive for. Finally, do not hesitate to openly criticize my method. One of my goals with this channel is to improve my language learning techniques, and I believe there's barely a better way of doing that than by allowing others to openly point at one's flaws in a decentralized manner. Alright, having clarified that, let's move on to the topic. Put succinctly, my approach to vocabulary acquisition can be split in the following 3 steps. Firstly, I create lists of vocabulary with new words I come across. Then, I review these lists on a periodic basis, trying to follow a spaced repetition method. And 3, I try to spend some time with each of the words I want to learn, doing different exercises with them. I will devote the whole part 2 video to this topic, but to give you an idea, it mostly consists of going through examples where the target word appears in context. Alright, now let's go through these 3 steps in more depth. The first step consists in capturing the new words I come across in a list. For whatever language I study, I have a list of selected materials that provide me with the inputs in that foreign tongue. I'm talking about written inputs such as textbooks, books, and articles, and about audio input such as podcasts and YouTube videos. While going through these materials, I come across words that I do not know. For example, I am listening to a podcast in French and the speaker says the word brèche. When this happens, I look for the translation and capture the word in a list. I write the word in the target language, the translation, and whenever possible, the sentence where I heard the word for the first time, since the context in which the word is embedded is super important for learning it quicker. Finally, I classify them in different topics depending on where I heard or read that word. For instance, here, I wrote down the new words I came across when I listened to the video 12 Russian idioms with English translations. This way, whenever I rewatch this video at some point in the future, I will firstly go through my list through the new words I had gathered the first time I saw it, and then listen to the video again while paying close attention to when these words show up. So far, the first step of the process, which shouldn't be mind-blowing, I guess. I now have the habit of repeating this step every time I encounter a new word, and I do it again and again, forever. For the programmers out there, I guess it's like a for loop in Python, or well, maybe I should say a while loop, because you repeat it with no end inside. Yeah, no, forget that, let's move on. Writing down the new words we encounter is certainly a good first step towards acquiring new words, but it's certainly not enough. As I explained in my previous video, we forget most of what we learn in a short amount of time. What we need to do is to create a system that prompts us to repeat the newly acquired words often. In the optimal case scenario, this repetition pattern should follow the spaced repetition curves. Therefore, the second main cornerstone of my vocabulary learning process consists of periodic periodically reviewing the words that I have already introduced in my list. The first thing I will do to this end is to update the list's status. The aim of this step is to check whether some words have been learned or at least are closer to being learned, or if on the contrary, the words we thought we had learned are starting to get forgotten on our minds. To this end, I just open the list, check some words, and see how I am doing. Do I manage to recall the meaning of that word? Do I struggle with it? Or have I just forgotten its meaning? In this updating stage, I usually follow the same structure. 1. I start with the most difficult words. 2. I continue with the words that I have added more recently to the list. And 3. I do a check of a random sample from the list. So for 1, I start checking the most challenging words so far. And how do I know which are the most challenging words? Well, they are always gathered at the very top of the list. Thus, I always start by checking the top. By starting with the most difficult words, I am being quite efficient because I'm going straight to the point instead of just wandering around and going through words I already know. As you can see on the screen, I do not have neither a translation of the word nor an example next to it. The reason being that at this point, I just wanted to practice recall. As many of you might know, trying to recall the meaning of a piece of information is a very powerful learning technique. The effort you make when trying to retrieve the meaning of that word strengthens your neuronal connections, which in turn makes it more likely for you to recall the meaning of that word the next time you encounter it. Then, for every word I see, I pay close attention to whether I manage to retrieve its meaning or not. And depending on my degree of assimilation or forgetfulness, I will reclassify this word accordingly. I sort of upgrade the word if I was not good at recalling its meaning. I might do this by highlighting it or by placing it at a higher level within the list. If, on the contrary, I was pretty good at recalling the word, I would sort of downgrade it. This means simply placing the word at a lower level in the list or just removing the highlight of the word. And I might as well leave the word as it is, or if I notice that I am pretty good at recalling its meaning, I might just delete it from that small list of top priority words. So once I'm done with this list of very challenging words, I move on to the words that have been added quite recently to the list. I usually place these words at the very end of the list, and they are normally very easily identifiable because they are classified in buckets. One of these buckets might be the video I listened to yesterday in Russian, the one about the 12 Russian idioms. And here again, I reclassify the status of these words, so to speak. So I decide whether I should upgrade them, I should downgrade their categories, or if I should just leave them as they are. So thus far, I have already checked the most difficult words, the newly added words, but still, there are tons of other words in this list. Most of them, though, have already been learned by me. In theory, though, because I might be starting to forget them. Thus, how do I sort of keep them at bay? How do I make sure that I am not forgetting them? One way of going about this is to check the whole list, but this would be a rather inefficient procedure because I would have to spend a lot of time going through the list just to find a few words that are starting to be forgotten in my mind. The way I go about this is by taking a heuristic. That is, I would just stop at a random point in the list and just check a few words after that. Do I still remember them or do I struggle with their meanings? I would just update their status accordingly. So after going through these 3 steps, I would be done with this updating stage. Now I can move forward to the most important step, namely to working on the words, to doing some exercises in order to make these words more memorable. But given that I don't want to overwhelm you with a lot of information, and given that I don't want to make this video too long, I will leave that for my part 2 video. Thank you for watching and see you next time.